Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and online role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another Roll20 review, a written and video review series where I take a look at the marketplace section of online role-playing website Roll20.net. With this video, we'll be looking at the Roll20 adaptation of Cat and Mouse, a first-level adventure by Kobold Press. The Roll20 module recently launched on July 18th, 2017, with conversions done by Dean Bigby and Bianca Binneman. Roll20 provided a press review copy of the module for the purposes of this review. Cat and Mouse was written and designed by Richard Pettit at Kobold Press in 2015 as an introductory first-level adventure to the Southlands, an Egyptian-like part of Kobold Press's RPG fantasy world, Midgard. Adventure takes place in the exotic city of Bastet, home to catfolk, ratfolk, and gnolls. Oh my. The player characters get swept up in a classic MacGuffin hunt with competing factions, leading to a multiple-choice ending. So what do you get in the $9.99 Roll20 Cat and Mouse package? You get the entire Cat and Mouse adventure divided into 3 parts, as well as an introduction. You get 5 gridded battle maps with dynamic lighting for subscribers, plus 1 overland map of Bastet. You get 7 unique NPCs with custom pictures, 15 common NPCs, and 5 pre-generated player character sheets. You get 14 NPC handout pictures, 1 unique magic item, and a fully searchable database courtesy of the standard rules document for 5th edition. So the journal offers a helpful getting started section, look at it right here, that explains some of the features you may not be as familiar with, such as moving hidden tokens from the GM layer to the token layer, adding light sources to player tokens, and using character sheets. Obviously, if you've DM'd Roll20 adventures before, you probably know all this, but it's nice to have for newcomers. The introduction section provides a backdrop of minimum information you'll need to familiarize yourself with the location and synopsis of the adventure. Get some information on Bastet, where it's located, and specifically the locations of where the adventure is going to be at, which is mainly in this perfume district. It does mention that if you want more information on Bastet, you will need to consult the Southlands campaign book from Kobold Press. Now, I think the adventure as written gives you enough information to play through it without needing that extra information, but if your players are going to go off the rails, it could be a concern if you're not as familiar with this setting. As a first level adventure, the variety and complexity of NPCs is obviously very limited, and it just uses a few specific locations, so it seems to be a pretty easy adventure to run, and a little different because it's an urban adventure and not a, forest encounter or a little cave dungeon crawl that a lot of low-B D&D style adventures tend to be. The story really is divided into 3 parts. In part 1, the PCs are introduced to their 2 main quest givers. They meet with the shifty Mistress Henna, as well as the gluttonous Gnoll Hakan al-Kareen. And everybody has really nice pictures, which were not originally provided in the Kobold Press adventure. These were done by the Roll20 conversion. So very nice, flavorful pictures for all these characters. You've got the cat folk, you've got your, let's see, where's Hakan? There he is. That is indeed a gluttonous gnoll. As well as some were-rats and all manner of just really fun, filthy characters. Battle map wise, in part 1 we only have the one, which is Hakan's house, which is actually, I believe, technically an optional location. Let's switch there. Actually, let's first look at the overland map of Bastet. So that tells you, and you're going to be looking at this map for quite a bit because there are sections that don't have an actual battle map to them, and unfortunately, one complaint I do have is that I'm not sure this is a player-friendly map because I don't think they're supposed to know where Rahid's squad and Festering Heth's locations are on this map. This is for the DM. But you'd want to use something for the players, so that's kind of a bummer that these... Actually, were these put on the GM layer? No, they weren't put on the GM layer. I think that's just totally on the token layer, so that's unfortunate. Let's scoot over to Hakan's house. So this one, you do have the annotated GM layer. And this map I would definitely suggest using. In fact, obviously, if you show your players a gridded map, they will most likely treat that as a location they can explore. I would encourage that, and hopefully they can keep the murdering to a minimum, because basically they're just meeting with this guy and getting a quest. Part 2 is basically where your players go on their hunt for the Grimalkin Eye magic item, as well as Rahid, the were-rat, who is in possession of the item. Your PCs will hit the streets to do some social investigations. They're given several leads and avenues, and this nice picture of a dark alley provided. I believe this was provided in the original adventure. Now, none of these scenes that it says here, the moneylender, the blind man, the laundry woman, these are all encounters that are designed to get them a certain location, or I think some of them even get you to the laundry woman, and then the laundry woman gives you the location. None of these have any kind of visual aids or maps or anything whatsoever. And unfortunately, as we just saw in that Per Bastet map, I don't know if you want to actually show that to your players, because that's got some kind of hidden information on it. They do have unique tokens here for these characters, which is nice, even though these would probably not be used in combat, frankly. You're just talking to these people, or you should be. However, they do not have handouts, so it would be a little, you'd have to do a little finagling to turn this into a handout that you could show your players, because right now I think it would show all this information, which is certainly not pertinent. So unfortunately, kind of a lack of visual aids for that. I guess you could leave up this image for that whole section. There are some battle maps for Part 2, because there are some encounters. Namely, towards the end of their investigation, they should stumble onto the Plaza of the Cat. This is a really neat encounter starring a very neat creature from the Tomb of Beasts, produced by Cobalt Press, which is a Bastet Temple Cat, which is a CR3 level creature. Where's the damn thing? There's it. It's just a cat, but it has a whole bunch of like spell-like abilities and traits, and plus it is like a holy creature that in this scenario happens to be kind of going crazy. The magic item you're actually searching for has the power to control cats, which is a big deal in a city full of like holy cats and cat folk. So as you can see here, there's a bunch of commoners on this map, which is really nifty. The players have to decide how to defuse this situation, hopefully as non-violently as possible, and they're given a couple interesting options for that, which is a really neat encounter. The other one is Festering Heths, which is where Rahid actually is, and he is being kept as a prisoner by this Heth character. And this is kind of a confusing setup, and it's unfortunately written this way in the adventure, but basically it's this weird kind of ship tower thing that juts out of this building that you can go in, and it's a really tight, small map. And again, you could probably go in here without even having to fight anything, but obviously there are things here to fight if you wish. But your goal is to grab Rahid. The third map, I think, is also optional and only comes into place if this Heth character basically tells your PCs to lies to them and says, Rahid's not here, go to here's his lair, go here. And there's just a whole bunch of bad things here. Which, by the way, no dynamic lighting, I believe, at all. It's just meant to be like a raised platform. Which is bizarre, and I think taking this path would make the adventure quite longer and more difficult. But it is an option if your players are just breezing through or just acting really dumb and you're feeling particularly mean. Part 3 begins once the PCs have dealt with Rahid and acquired the Grimalkin Eye, which is our MacGuffin item. And they can decide what they want to do with it and which party they want to help. Regardless, they are to go the next encounter, which is the Square of Lions. This is kind of your big climax of the adventure, where they meet both Mistress Henna and Hakan. Both of them have their own little forces in this plaza area. Also, this plaza includes 2 caged lions, which basically act as an environmental hazard, which is kind of nifty. They are hungry lions just sitting in a cage. One weird quirk of this map is the building in the southwest has a flat roof, as written in the adventure, but the walls are still 20 feet high. So, as you can see here, there's no dynamic lighting here, and I feel like there should have been at least some. I can understand maybe at least being able to see the catfolk maybe crouched on the ledge, but it seems kind of weird and a little confusing. Makes it look like it's just like a patio or something. Otherwise, the dynamic lighting is pretty decent on all the maps. I mean, they're really simple maps we're talking about. There's not a whole lot to do or mess up. One bummer is that if your players are actually on this street, there's no dynamic lighting whatsoever, which makes you think, what's even the point of having this here? if you're not going to block it off. Obviously, there is some in here. An overall complaint I have about the maps, maybe not a complaint, but it's a quirk. They're all very small. So if you've got a very large party, or if your party is having a bunch of squishy or range-oriented first-level characters, you could find them at a major disadvantage in most of these encounters, and it could just be frustrating to try to get around. So it's just kind of a quirk of the adventure you should get into. This is an urban adventure, but they are very tight quarters. Finally, having custom tokens and picks for the important NPCs is just fantastic and a big selling point for this module. I love all of these. Heth, Mistress Henna, Rahid, these are all really nice to have. I'm glad that Roll20 provided these as visual aids, because there's a lot of really interesting characters, and these aren't just like a bunch of people. These are gnolls and catfolk and were-rats, which is really fantastic and drives home the immersiveness of having this exotic kind of Egyptian-style setting. A bummer is only about half of them have, maybe not half, but some of them don't have handouts, as I mentioned, like the laundry woman and those kind of characters, the one-off just social encounters. They don't have a handout associated, which are the ones you'd really want, because they don't have a battle map. And some of them don't have tokens on their character sheet. They have tokens on the map, obviously. So like Rahid, here's his token. But on here, it's just the handout. The only reason that matters is because one cool thing that Roll20 does is you can click on this, click on a token, and literally drag it, and then there's your token ready to go, and it's already linked to the sheet. Now, with this adventure, it's very small. You really don't need to be doing that very often, frankly. There's not a case for like random encounters or additional foes. But it is weird that just some of them just don't have tokens in place. Instead, they just have the handout sitting there on the character sheet. And they have pre-generated player character sheets, which is very surprising that these are provided. This is an introductory level 1 adventure, so if you've got people that aren't familiar with making characters or not as interested in making characters, or you just want to slap something together really quick, then you've got these 5 ready to go, although the description does say 4 to 6 players. But these are cool characters. You've basically got a kobold rogue, a dwarf cleric, an elf-marked wizard, human paladin, and human fighter. Some of these are much better produced than others. The kobold rogue has this giant cool story about how she's this cool alchemist, and the elf-marked wizard has an equally cool story about being a charlatan and stealing a precious item and running away, being on the run. And meanwhile, you've got the human fighter, who is a retired and a bouncer, but still level 1, and then you can play them, so I don't know. Seems kind of weird. These are nice to have, obviously, but some of them were definitely given more care than others. Some of them also have magic items at level 1, which is bizarre. Like the dwarf cleric has, I think, a staff of healing, which is like, oh, that's pretty fantastic. So DMs, do look over these and make sure these are all balanced with how you want them. So in the end, the journal is well organized, easy to navigate. The story plays out really like a classic Shadowrun mission more than D&D, putting the PCs in the middle of a shady deal. There's plenty of chances for fun role-playing and social situations. In fact, I would suggest that if your gaming group is more into hack and slash, Cat and Mouse may not be nearly as satisfying, whereas if your gaming group is more into playing detectives and being into mysteries and discoveries and exploration and social situations, they'll get a lot more out of it than people that just want to go into a dungeon and kill shit and get loot, because there's really not a lot of that in this adventure. I do think it's a really fun introductory adventure that's a lot different. I really, really enjoy that Shadowrun style of very the noir, like MacGuffin items, and there's different people out to kill you or screw you over and that kind of thing. And I think as long as you're communicating to their players and you know what your gaming group wants to get out of it, this could be a really fun adventure. But this is definitely not your standard intro dungeon crawl with a bunch of goblins. So final pros and cons from our Roll20 review of Cat and Mouse. Pros: unique custom portraits for all the named NPCs. Very, very fantastic. Love them. They fit really well. Very flavorful, and I'm really glad Roll20 provided them. You get handouts for most of the NPCs, although we're missing some, so that'll be in the con. And you get pre-generated character sheets for the PCs, which is really nice. Didn't expect that at all. That's a really nice add. And I think the journal's, well organized, and obviously it's exactly how the original PDF document, which I actually have, is organized. So it's pretty well done there. Cons: there's no additional visual aids or maps for the Perfume District section, other than having these. This kind of counts as a visual aid, and I would have counted that had they used actual handouts for these things instead of putting them in token form. Because the handout, I think, in this case would be more useful than the tokens, since these are all just social situations. And not every character sheet has a draggable token, which is very minor, because you really don't need to add additional troops to most of these sections. I do wish there would have been a bit more dynamic lighting blocking used. It's very minimal as it is, but again, that's being pretty nitpicky. Final verdict is a simple first-level adventure. Cat and Mouse provides a fun introduction to an exotic urban setting. It's especially well-suited to groups that would rather role-play and talk their way out of confrontations. Well, thank you for everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. Thank you.